Is the slide visible?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yes, sir, it is visible.
Okay. Well, actually, the title of my presentation is Economic Development of the Northeastern Region, the Way Forward. In fact, I had done some work on this, of course. So we did it for the pre-liberalization period and the post-liberalization period. Of course, initially it was done till 2012-13. Then, of course, I have been working on this with data which is very current, and I'd like to see how the performance of the Northeastern region, particularly the states, has changed over a period of time. So basically, I'd like to speak about the performance of the states over a period of time, the development experience, and the problems that the states are having, and the way forward, or maybe the potential, or how we can realize this potential. It might be a little bit lengthy, I don't know. Of course, this is a kind of post-dinner kind of a talk for you, but for us, dinner will be a little bit later. Anyhow, thank you very much for attending this webinar. So my outline of presentation will be something like this. So where I'll talk about initially economic development and regional disparity. Students of economics, they know it very well, what economic development is all about. Then since we will be talking about the Northeastern economy, basically it's a regional economy. So we talk about regional development. Then how the economy performed in the pre-liberalization period, briefly. Then the most important thing is the performance of the economy in the Northeastern region in the post-liberalization period, and issues of development and the challenges, and how to take care of that, the way forward. So this is how I would like to go ahead. Now, when you talk about development, everybody knows about this development. It's a dynamic process in which transforms an economy and a society from a relatively backward state to a more advanced state. Every student of economics knows about this. And while talking about development, of course, it has a number of dimensions. We can talk about in terms of economic dimension, for example, productivity and income, change in that, growth in productivity and income. So there might be structural changes in the economy and the society. When you talk about structural change, probably the relative importance of different sectors of the economy might be changing, maybe from agriculture-based economy to secondary sector-based economy, then to services sector-based economy, something like that. Similarly, changes happening in the society. Then institutional changes, the rules, regulations, guidelines, which actually govern certain systems. So these might be changing. And at the same time, to accommodate these changes, there should be some corresponding change in the attitude and values of people. So whatever be the dimension of development, the ultimate goal of the process is to ensure improvement in the quality of life of people at large. And this might be in the form of kind of overall quality of life in terms of better nutrition, better health, better education, and so many other things at large. So this is the idea of development. But of course, development, the concept of development nowadays is also increasingly defined in terms of human development. Basically, we talk about human capabilities in terms of education, in terms of health, in terms of income. Income is obviously one important or crucial dimension of human development as well. Certain parameters are there. There has been changes in the parameters over a period of time, but it basically refers to kind of widening of people's choices with regard to more or less similar areas. So people should be having enough of choices to pursue a particular thing. So whether in terms of earning income, in terms of choosing a profession, in terms of pursuing a particular academic goal. So choices should be made available. There should be sufficient amount of choices. Okay. Apart from this, nowadays we all know about the sustainable development concept as well, where we talk about development which should ensure development today, not only today, but also it should ensure development for the future, for which probably sufficient amount of resources should be made available. So the future generation should also have the similar kind of choices as the present generation has been enjoying, or maybe has been having as of today. Now, when you talk about development, the issue of regional disparity also comes into picture. Now, normally for large countries, along the process of development, actually this regional disparity is witnessed or is evident. So this is considered to be a byproduct of economic growth and new opportunities in trade and external finance. So it has been reported to be very common in relatively large countries, like for example US, like USSR, something like that. But of course, some of the big countries are in the first world countries. Then obviously, the kind of regional disparities might be relatively less. But in the case of developing countries, in many parts actually we find a lot of regional disparities. Now, theoretically, it has been pointed out that this change in the regional disparity can be considered as an inverted U curve. So basically, it means at the beginning of the economic development, the regional disparity will be less. After a point of time, with growth or development, disparities will increase. After a point of time, it stabilizes. Then, with maturity in growth, disparities will come down. So that is what is reported in some of the economic literature. But if we go by the conventional growth theories, so conventional growth theories do not have any justification or explanation for decreasing of disparity. Sorry, so for increasing of disparities, basically regional disparity that we talk about, they don't have much explanation for it. So they can provide the justification or explanation for decreasing of disparities. In essence, we can say convergence. There are a lot of convergence theories actually. But insofar as this divergence or regional disparities are concerned, growth theories are not having enough of explanation. But there is the theory of economics of agglomeration, so which actually talks about how regional disparities might occur. Now, when you talk about agglomeration, so in agglomeration, actually certain areas or regions or locations, because of certain advantages there, so certain economic activities concentrate. And after a point of time, okay, a lot of economies of scale start happening in the form of maybe kind of better availability of resources, better labor, human resources availability, infrastructural facilities being created. So these locations naturally can be ahead of other locations, and accordingly, so probably they will be having some kind of geographical advantage or maybe historical advantage. Normally, we find that in any place. So if it is a kind of meeting point of two, three roads, we find certain economic activities being concentrated because so these are the places where okay movement of more people will be there. So obviously that those places will be having some kind of economic advantages. So that way it starts, and after a point of time, okay, so increasing returns to scale or maybe positive feedback mechanism might be helping these regions to maintain their leadership over others. So that way, in fact, that way it goes, that way it happens. And in fact, probably, so that is the way we can explain the economic prosperities of western part of the country or maybe the southern or kind of northwestern part of the country. In India, particularly, if you look into, we find mostly economic activities and prosperities being concentrated in the western belt of the country, southern belt of the country, and to some extent in the northern part of the country. So probably once they are ahead of other, so they can maintain their leadership, and that way, in fact, so they can be the centers of excellence kind of a thing, or maybe kind of front runner insofar as economic development is concerned, but other places might be lagging behind. So that way it happens. Now, when you talk about regional development, actually regional disparity also calls for efforts to bring in regional development. Now, regional development, in essence, you see, so probably we may have to think about region as a particular contiguous landmass or area which might be having specific characteristics, and probably these regions might be requiring some specific efforts. Now, so by regional development, we want to mean those activities which are aimed at addressing regional problems and issues. And probably some development intervention so might be needed, which might help in overcoming these type of problems and issues at the regional level. It's not state specific level, or maybe kind of a very micro level kind of intervention kind of a thing. So maybe bigger policies or bigger interventions might be required, which actually benefit or take care of the problems faced by the region. Now, regional development is said to focus on good practice in the support and promotion of wealth as a part of an integrated geographical approach. It's not a uh, as I isolated uh, locational approach kind of a thing. So it's a kind of integrated approach, integrated geographical approach. So covering the entire region.
Hello, sir. Hello, sir. Yes. Sir, please, can you unmute? Because yes, yes, sir. Okay.
For how long? For how long did it happen?
No, sir, for only like 5 seconds only.
Okay, fine.
Okay.
So otherwise it's fine, right?
Yes, it's
Okay.
fine.
Okay. I don't know. I didn't mute it myself. Anyhow, okay. When we talk about regional disparity and regional development, actually, if we look at the Indian experience, we find in India, actually, economic growth hasn't been accompanied by balanced regional development. Already we mentioned about this western part of the country, so which actually advanced the progressed like anything, but the eastern part of the country hasn't been able to benefit that much. So this phenomenon of regional disparity has been recognized or maybe mentioned in many literature in the country, and it has been pointed out that the relatively backward states and regions, so they have failed to reap benefits of globalization. Particularly if we look at the situation after 1991, there are certain regions which have actually been able to gain much out of this process of economic liberalization, whereas some regions have failed to kind of gain out of the process of economic liberalization and kind of uh, economic activities the country has witnessed over a period of time. Uh, yes, apart from this regional or maybe regions, so there are different marginalized sections which are also bypassed by the process of development. Of course, that is not very much of concern for us, but we are more concerned about the regional development process. In fact, there are two plan documents. Of course, nowadays we do not have any plan as such. So 11th plan document and 12th plan document talked about that. So they focused on inclusive growth. So that basically means covering all the sections of the society, covering all the regions. Although it is regional development has not been specifically focused on that, but even then inclusive growth has been focused on that. So having said this, we can talk about the northeastern region because we feel, and in fact that has been supported by data, that the northeastern region hasn't been able to reap benefits of accelerated economic growth in which the country has witnessed over a period of time. Being students and teachers of this region, we know what the Northeast is all about. So I should not introduce the region to you again. All of us know about this. It's a landlocked region bounded by foreign countries. It almost 8% of the country's geographical area belongs to the northeastern region. Around 4%, less than 4% of the total population resides in the region. Although we consider this to be a homogeneous unit, but actually it's a contiguous unit if we do not consider Sikkim. But it's not a homogeneous unit. In fact, there are a lot of variations in terms of topography, climate, and density of population. In terms of topography, for example, say Arunachal Pradesh, Nagaland, Mizoram, Meghalaya, so they might be almost entirely hilly. Then Assam actually have almost 80% of the land in plain areas, although 20% might be hilly. Similarly, we have places like Manipur, so where the hills and plains both are there. Tripura is also similar. So there are a lot of variations in the climate, topography, even the density. We can have a look at the density. So density of population, if you look at, we find, so there is huge variation in terms of density of population as per 2011 population census. You see, Arunachal Pradesh has a very less density of population. The region as a whole has 176 persons per square kilometer as density of population. But if you look at other states like Tripura and Assam, so they are highly dense state in terms of population. Assam's density of population is higher than the overall density of population for the country as a whole. Tripura is slightly below the average density of population of the country. So the overall lesser density of population in the region is is because of the fact that the hills are sparsely populated. Many of the hills are not accessible, or these are not fit for residential purposes. So that way, in fact, there are huge variations. Arunachal has the least lowest density of population, but it doesn't mean that every portion of Arunachal is inhabitable. So that kind of a thing is to be looked into out here. So we have this map where Sikkim is located here. Other places, of course, as we can see, almost 95%, more than 95% of the boundaries of northeastern region are touching the foreign countries. So be it Bangladesh, be it Myanmar, be it Bhutan, every means other side will be having China is there. So the more than 95% of the boundaries actually are touching the foreign countries. Now, how is the nature and structure of the northeastern economy? Now, as of today, if we look at Northeast is not a prosperous region. Rather, we can say that this is a relatively backward regional economy. And if we try to compare, we'll try to see how backward this region is in terms of economic development. My focus here will be on economic development, although we are seeing development as such. So I'll be trying to look into from the point of view of national income, from the point of view of per capita income, something like that. So in terms of those parameters, Northeastern region is considered to be a relatively backward regional economy. Now, many of the states are highly dependent on center. See, from a financial point of view, if we look into, in fact, bigger states, even Assam, which is the largest state in the region, so it is also not a self-sufficient economy. So Assam has to rely on the center for around maybe more than 60% of its resources in a sense. It might be coming in the form of grants or aids or maybe whatever. Many central government schemes might be there through them. A lot of central assistance comes to the state. I believe so. These are similar for many other states in the region out here. Another characteristics of this northeastern region is can the noise be reduced?
No, sorry, sir. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, sir.
Well, apart from that, we also know that it's a tertiary sector dominated economy, except for Nagaland. Actually, almost all the states have a relatively large tertiary sector in the form of services sector kind of activities. We find like transport, hotel, restaurant. All those things will be part of this tertiary sector activities. Of course, nowadays almost all the countries in the world are dominated by the tertiary sector. The same is the case in the case of northeastern region. Apart from that, one very important issue about northeastern economy is that here the percentage of public administration in terms of overall income of the states, that percentage is relatively much higher. So compared to many other states in the country, So that basically shows that you see the most of the income of the states will be coming through government expenditures or government investment only. The public private sector might not be playing a very important role out here. Now, while looking into the economy of the northeastern region pre-liberalization, just for some information, I am just bringing this one. So northeastern region at the time of independence, we can consider this to be broadly 3 administrative divisions, except for the princely states of Manipur and Tripura. The other parts of northeastern region, except for means also excluding Sikkim, was undivided Assam. So during that period, the economic status of the northeastern region was better than the rest of the country, and that status deteriorated. And by the 1960s, the per capita income of the region, particularly the state of Assam, went down the national average. And since then, so okay, the region and Assam in particular are actually lying below the national average in terms of per capita income. Of course, for that period, actually most of the data are available only for Assam, because as I have mentioned, most of the states of northeastern region were actually undivided Assam. So that's why the data were available only for Assam. And Assam's NSDP was higher than the national NNP during that period, as I have mentioned already. So with with political freedom came the partition, which was a huge blow to the region. The traditional approach routes to the region to the rest of the country was cut off. All of us know about that actually. Now today we say that Delhi bahut dur hai. Yes, Delhi is far off from us, but at some point of time, Delhi was not the capital. Kolkata was the capital of the country. Kolkata was very near to us, and we had direct route to Kolkata through waterways, through roadways, and we could get to the sea. We could get to the capital of the country. But after partition, already of course Delhi was made the capital. After partition, the traditional routes was cut off. We could not go to Kolkata or to the port, to the sea, through the traditional routes of East Bengal. That has been cut off. So we are connected only through a very small chicken corridor, and that has created a lot of problem for everybody out here. You just think about the kind of problem, geographical isolation that all of us are having in the region out here. You are at Aizawl, you know very well, so how difficult it is to move or transport goods and services, goods particularly from Delhi or other places to Aizawl. Because although we can fly, we can use the airways for traveling from Aizawl to Delhi or maybe any other part of the country, but the fact is that goods have to be transported, and majority of the goods are to be transported from other parts of the country. So that is to be done through roadways. And since infrastructural facilities are not so good in the form of having a better railway connectivity or network, we have to do it through roadways. So the cost of transportation is high. And as a result of all these things, okay, the transport bottleneck and high cost of movement of men and materials has resulted or hindered economic integration of the region with the rest of the country. And it has also reduced attractiveness of the region as a destination of investment. So that is why today the region is not having enough of capital to invest itself. So for that, if we have to attract or maybe bring foreign investment into the region, then probably we have to do a lot of homework and we have to pursue the matter with great caution and care. Because if somebody has to come to invest, they will definitely give importance or preference to those places which are easily accessible. Physical accessibility is much better compared to the northeastern region. So if they have to choose between Himachal Pradesh and maybe Meghalaya, probably they will choose Himachal Pradesh because that is nearer to Delhi, that is nearer to Mumbai. So that type of a situation we have been facing for last 75 years, almost 75 years. So if we talk about the economic performance of the northeastern region, so there are certain data which have actually helped us to estimate the compound annual growth rate. So the per capita compound annual growth rate of the region, basically regional economy, during 1980-81 to 1991, this period was around 1.75%, which was much lesser than the compound annual growth rate of per capita income of the country as a whole, which was at around 3%. So this gap actually continued, and that gap had a lot to do with the economic performance of the region later on. Of course, so I carried out certain exercise with the help of the data. Now, this exercise initially was based on the data pertaining to the 7 northeastern states. At that point of time, I didn't consider Sikkim, because Sikkim's entry to the northeastern region or entry to the country as a whole is a little bit different. Again, means contrary to the kind of relationship that we have, the 7 northeastern states have, the Sikkim doesn't have a long historical relationship with the other parts of the country or the northeastern part of the country. So Sikkim was made a state of the country in 1975, and also it was included as a part of northeastern region only in 2003. Because of all those things, actually, initially I didn't include Sikkim for the analysis, but later on, for later period, I have tried to see how Sikkim has performed over a period of time. Now, I try to see the comparative growth trends in per capita income. Per capita income is one indicator which helps us in knowing the economic performance of the states, individual states. So I try to see the comparative growth, how per capita income has grown over a period of time for each of these states. Then we also try to see the growth trends in regional NDP and NSDP. So NDP is net domestic product here. So basically it's a regional. Regional means the NDP is indicator of the income. Okay. NSDP is indicator of income of the state. NDP is indicator of the income of the region. Now here we try to see how the income of the region is nothing but the summation of the income of all the states of the region. So how there has been changes in the income of the region and change in the income of the individual states. Also, I tried to see the trends in the sectoral composition of net state domestic product and regional net domestic product. So that will help us in understanding whether there is kind of structural transformation, whether out of primary, secondary, and tertiary sector, which one of the sectors and how. So the importance or role of these sectors have changed over a period of time. And data have been collected from Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, Government of India, and also from the Handbook of Statistics on Indian Economy of Reserve Bank of India. So regarding comparative growth trends in per capita NSDP of northeastern region states in comparison with NNP of India. So this is a 2004-05 prices, because I tried to estimate it for the period from 91-92 to 2012-2013. We tried to estimate the compound annual growth rate. Compound annual growth rate basically gives us a kind of growth rate over a period of time, starting from 1991-92, that is the beginning period, and the end period is 2012-13. So during this period, how the individual states and the northeastern region as a whole has performed, and also the performance of the country as a whole, so that can be looked into. And the income is actually in the base period of 2004-05 prices. So these are statistical things actually, current prices, constant prices, those things I do not look into as of now. Now, if you look at, we find this compound annual growth rate that has been given here. Region-wise, the value is 3.31 during this period. And if we compare this with the country as a whole, during this period, 91 to 2012-13, so 20-year period actually. So this 20-year period, the country has grown at the rate of 4.66 annually, whereas the region has grown at the rate of 3.31%. Of course, some of the relatively smaller states are performing well. I think my friends of Thankima College will be very happy to note that your state has performed the best over a period of time, 6.52%, followed by Tripura. And the bigger states like Assam and Manipur, they have not performed that well. I'm talking about in terms of per capita income. I'm not talking about as a whole state domestic product. Okay, so this is net state domestic product. So basically, that's the indicator of income. So per capita income, basically, I'm talking about. So you can look at these graphically. That will give you the idea. Just see, Arunachal Pradesh around 3.37, just hardly above the average value for the region as a whole. But Mizoram and Tripura, they have performed much better, better than the regional average, better than the national average. Okay, Assam and Manipur. Manipur has performed the worst. Assam is slightly above that. So performance-wise, during this 20 years period, the performance is not very good. Next thing is to look into the per capita NSDP of northeastern states as percentage of India's NNP per capita at 2004-5. Basically, this means you see an individual state's per capita income, how high or how low in comparison with the country's per capita income. That is the figure. If suppose we find per capita income of a state is suppose 100, the value is 100, that means the per capita income of the state and the country is at par. If it is more than 100, we can say that per capita income of the state is higher than the national per capita income. So if it is less than 100, that basically means we are kind of below the national average. Now, if you look at the different states out here, Arunachal Pradesh, Assam, Manipur, so what you find is that overall 91, 92 onwards till 2012-13, most of the states have performed, means the performance has deteriorated. Arunachal Pradesh, for example, its income was higher than, per capita income was higher than the national average. It slipped below the national average by 2006-07, and by 2012-13, it is 95% of the per capita income of the country as a whole. Assam's condition is worse in a sense. It was initially also it was less than the national per capita income, average national per capita income, and later on the performance has deteriorated further, and ultimately in 2012-13, so it is around 60.35%. Manipur, more or less similar. You see, in fact, performance is a little bit more worse compared to Assam. From 97, it has become around 62. Meghalaya, again, it was above the national average, national per capita income in 91-92, but it has fluctuated in between. It has gone down, so it has gone down the national average. Again, here Mizoram's performance is good. From 71.49%, it has gone above the national average. Nagaland is relatively better, so it's around 120.67% of the national per capita income, but even then its performance has gone down. Similarly, Tripura has performed much better. So from around 77.2%, which was much below the national per capita income, average per capita income, it has gone up to 108.9%. That means it's above the national per capita income, average income. So as a whole, if we look at the regional per capita income, in 91-92, the value was 95.63, but it has gone down to 71.79% of the per capita income of the country in 2012-13. What does it mean? You see, it means that the performance of economic performance of the region as a whole has gone down. Actually, the performance hasn't been good, rather it has worsened over a period of time. Now, this worsening has happened because of the fact that the bigger states of the region haven't performed well. For example, Assam hasn't performed well. Okay, so this is one important. Manipur has also not performed that well. So because of that, actually, the performance of the region as a whole has gone down. Although some of the states like Tripura and Mizoram, they have performed well, but they are relatively smaller states. So ultimately, although they have done much better, but overall, if you consider the kind of economic performance of the other states like Assam, Manipur, so which are relatively bigger states, so this is not sufficient to pull up the national or regional per capita income. So this is again grammatical representation. This is not very clear. You will not be able to find out that much. Now this is the regional NDP and the states as percentage of India's NNP at 2004-5 prices. Of course, that shows actually how much we are contributing individually over a period of time to the national income level. And of course, you just see the smaller states will be having very small share of the total income. NDP is NDP of the region means regional income, and NNP country's income. So these figures will be small, obviously, because the states are very small. Assam has had a bigger share at some point of time, 2.495%, but that figure has gone down to 1.545%. So accordingly, the regional share in the country's income level has also gone down from 3.569% to 2.660% in 2012-13. So same thing can be seen in the diagram. So this is one diagram actually which shows, of course, this higher portion is Assam's performance over a period of time. Its share has gone down. Share has gone down means it has not been able to catch up with the performance of the national economy. That's the reason. Not to talk about national economy, even at the regional level, this performance is not very good, right? So this is NDPs of the states as percentage of regional NDP at 2004-5 prices. Now, this shows over a period of time the importance of the different economies in the region. You see, this blue part is Arunachal Pradesh, the red one is Assam, then green part is Manipur, Meghalaya, then Mizoram, then Nagaland and Tripura. You just look at, so this entire thing is for the region, this is 100. Out of 100, what is the kind of contribution of different states? Obviously, Assam's contribution will be the highest, but that contribution share actually, percentage share has gone down. Okay, just percentage share has gone down. Same thing. Arunachal Pradesh share has more or less remained more or less similar, stable at a particular level. Manipur's share has also remained more or less similar, stable. Okay. Now, in the case of Meghalaya, it has increased a little bit. That basically means the performance might be a little bit better. Mizoram's share has gone up, so that shows a better performance. Similarly, Nagaland's share has also gone up. And lastly, Tripura's share has gone very high, relatively much higher compared to 91, 92. So that shows the kind of overall scenario of the regional development, regional economic development in the northeastern region. Lastly, I would like to show you another table which talks about the kind of overall growth during two different periods. We try to divide it into a kind of 3 different decades. 2 decades actually, 80 to 90, that is one, and 91, 92 to 2012-13. So actually this is 91, 92 to 2012-13, this is a 20 period, it's 20 years, 2 decades actually. So for the 3 decades as a whole, 1980-81 to 2012-13, how the states, individual states and the region has performed. That is the objective of this exercise, where I found, in fact, we can see it from the diagram here. So here, blue portion is the growth rate during 80-81 to 1991. The red part is the post-liberalization period, 20 years of post-liberalization period. And the green part is overall from 80s to 2012-13. That is for the 30-year period. Now, if you look at all these 7 states of the northeastern region, as a whole, and India. For India, you just see the red part is higher. So that basically means during the 20 years period from 91-92 till 2012-13, the economic performance of the country is better than the performance during 1980-81 to 1990-91. Okay, but if you look at the individual states of northeastern region, except for 2 or 3 states, or maybe 2 or 3 states, almost all other states have performed poorly in the post-liberalization period. Just look at Arunachal. So during the post-liberalization period till 2012-13, the performance is much worse. Okay, The same is the case with Mizoram. Mizoram performed better during pre-liberalization period. Post-liberalization period, of course, till 2012-13, if we consider this CAGR, that is not very impressive. Then Nagaland also similar. Tripura has performed better in essence. And overall, of course, Northeastern region has been shown to be experiencing a little bit higher growth compared to the pre-liberalization period. Assam has been able to achieve a little bit higher compared to the pre-liberalization period. Same is the case with Manipur, marginally higher. Meghalaya has been shown to be performing a little bit better in the post-liberalization period. So that way, I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 states have been able to perform a little bit better in the second phase, whereas the country as a whole had performed much better in the second phase, whereas Northeastern region has performed slightly better in the second phase. So that shows actually individual states haven't been able to gain that much out of this exercise. This is another which shows actually the contribution of different sectors in the income level of the region and the country as a whole. You see, primary sector, even today, actually is more important in Northeastern region compared to the country as a whole. Secondary sector is relatively less important, and tertiary sector, although it is important, it is less important compared to the country as a whole. Now, this was for the region as a whole. Now, if we take into account the recent data, very recent data, what can we see? So these were the data till 2012-13 from 91-92 for a longer period of time. Now, in the short period from 2013-14 or 12-13 onwards, so what kind of change can we see? Of course, this data will not, this figure will not be portraying much in a sense, because you see, so this is the NSDP of Northeastern states, means in fact state domestic product of the states during 2012-13 to 2018-19. Now this red line is for Assam. Obviously, Assam's overall state domestic product is much higher, so the graph will be much above. So other graphs will be much lower because of the fact that their overall state domestic product value will be relatively much lower. So we can see that again from this graph. So of course the units are different. So this shows actually overall this is a NSDP figure. For the country as a whole, if we look at, you see, so there is a continuous growth. Of course, the figure is from 2014-15 onwards till 2019-20. 2021 figure is also available, but of course we know about the corona pandemic, which is why the performance last year there was a negative growth rate, as you know, negative 22%. So obviously, so that will be there will be a fluctuation out there. But otherwise, you see, continuous growth is there in case of net state domestic product. So if we look at the compound annual growth rate of NSDP of Northeastern states during this period, 12-13 to 18-19, what do we find? We find that there is a kind of bright spot for some of the states out here. Of course, I didn't try to estimate it for Northeastern region as a whole. I could have done it actually, so that's a mistake. But I could not manage to do that. You see, as a whole, for the country during this period, of course, for the country, the period is from 2014-15 to 18-19. The annual growth rate, compound annual growth rate is around 4.81, a little bit less than 5%. But for some of the states in the Northeastern region, the compound annual growth rate is much higher. For example, even Arunachal Pradesh has performed better, 5.39. Assam has performed that way much better in the form of 6.59%. Manipur is also high. Only exception is Meghalaya. Of course, I need to verify whether the data is correct or not, but the source is same. So performance is actually around 2.5% growth rate. Mizoram's performance has been tremendous, 9.36%, and Tripura has also performed much better. You see, even Sikkim. So here, of course, I have tried to include all the states, current Northeastern states. Sikkim's performance is better, but it's lesser than the performance of Mizoram and Tripura. As a whole, if we look at the performance of these two states, Mizoram and Tripura, so have been very good during the entire period of study. A similar situation in the form of per capita NSDP, if we look at this is the per capita NSDP for northeastern states, Arunachal Pradesh, Assam, Manipur, Sikkim, Tripura. Of course, here the per capita income of Sikkim is much higher. So this is for the latest period, 2018-19. So this is the figure actually, around 2,42,000. That is the amount. Okay, so that is much higher. For Tripura, the value is around 82,632. For Mizoram, the value is higher. I believe apart from Sikkim, Mizoram has a relatively higher per capita income, 1,07,853. But compared to that, Manipur's value is much lower. Assam's value is also lower. Okay. So again, the bigger states haven't performed that well, even in the recent time period. In terms of per capita income, I'm talking about. Of course, the growth, annual growth rate probably might be a little bit different. So this is the per capita net national income. Of course, it could have been better if I could have drawn the graphs together, but it was not possible. You see, for some of the states in the northeastern region, the per capita income has been much higher than the average per capita income of the country, right? So something like this. So this is the growth rate, compound growth rate of per capita NSDP of northeastern states. Here, if you look at, you find again the growth rate in per capita means, in fact, the difference from the base period from 2012-13 till 2018-19. What is the performance? The performance has been very good for Mizoram and Tripura. So even Sikkim is behind these two states. Assam has also started performing better now. Its average is higher than the average compound annual growth rate of the country during this period. But again, Meghalaya's performance has been found to be very low. So probably I have to check the data, but otherwise, if it is the right data, then performance is relatively much worse, right? Now, this is the situation. From all these data, all these tables, what we can infer is that, you see, in the post-liberalization period till 2012-13, majority of the states in the northeastern region couldn't reap the benefits of increased economic activity in the country in the post-liberalization period. Okay, of course, out of the performance of the individual states varied, and the performance of some of the smaller states like Mizoram and Tripura was much better, very impressive compared to some relatively kind of bigger states like Assam and Manipur. They were also relatively older states of the region. So probably the relatively worse performance of these states have pulled down the overall performance of the region as a whole. So that means to say that during the post-liberalization period till 2012-13, the northeastern states were not in a position to reap benefits out of increased economic activities. And as a result of that, the gap between the income level in the region and the country as a whole that widened further. Already there was a gap in between the regional income level and the national income level that widened further. Now, what are the issues? Already we tried to outline some of the issues out there. What are the challenges? Now, geographical isolation is one big challenge out there. So, of course, we cannot do anything about that. But if we can overcome this problem to some extent, that becomes better for the region as a whole. Accessibility to the sea, accessibility to the ports, so that is very important. Direct connectivity to the rest of the country is very important. As of now, probably if we have to travel to Delhi from Agartala by Rajdhani Express, it will be requiring more than 36 hours probably. From Guwahati, it is around 30 hours or 28 hours. So that is how one has to spend. Actually, if we would have a better connectivity, probably directly through the other parts of the region, other parts of the country, and probably that could have been much better. Now, in terms of economic front, what we find is that the regional economy is not a self-reliant economy. So the region has to depend a lot on other parts of the country. Even for foodstuff and other basic requirements, actually, we are not self-sufficient. And in terms of resources, similar situation. The region has to depend a lot on the grants, central grants and assistance of the central government. In case of Assam, already I had given the example, more than 60% of the resources come from the center. In fact, some of the smaller states with lesser resources, the same situation repeats. Obviously, overall growth in individual states and regional economy is important, because growth is important because once you have surplus, so that surplus income can be used to achieve better facilities in the form of education and health, which are very important from the point of view of human development. So that's why the growth is important, growth rate is important, so that is to be taken care of. Now, as we have seen, for some of the states, the growth rates in recent years have been good, but in kind of previous period, the performance was not good. So obviously, we need to have a kind of positive growth rate, an impressive positive growth rate for each of the states, so that the overall regional income or economy grow. So we have a huge pool of unemployed youth for whom opportunities have to be created. Now, at some point of time, the regional economy was much better actually at the time of independence. And in fact, there were a lot of opportunities created there by the investment made during the pre-independence period. So in the form of maybe tea, gardens, coal, petroleum products, and so many other things, plywood factories, so on forest, so many investments were made, so which actually resulted in generation of employment opportunities. But in today's world, investment has dried up, and probably that is one of the reasons that we do not have a lot of employment opportunities out here. So a lot of people from the northeastern region, particularly from the state of Assam and some other states actually, so they migrate to different parts of the country to get employed in some kind of informal sector as security guard, as worker in the hotels, and so many other things. So obviously, opportunities need to be created for these unemployed youth. And now we are passing through a very difficult period. It's a COVID period, pandemic period. The COVID pandemic has been creating havoc everywhere. Now, during this COVID period, obviously effective demand of the people will be relatively lower, because many of the people might have lost their jobs, income level has dried up. So ultimately, people's effective demand might have been affected adversely. So if economy has to be boosted, economy has to boost up, then aggregate demand, effective demand has to improve. For that, actually, innovative policies of the government will be required in the short term. But for the long term, again, overall, we have to think about economic development as a whole. Appropriate policies might be required, how to kind of improve, or how to kind of bring positive changes in different sectors of the economy will be important. Because during the COVID pandemic, we know many of the services sector industries have been adversely hit. Tourism sector has been affected like anything. So these things have to be somehow given the boost by innovative policies of the government. The Vision 2020 document, of course, that has already 2020 has already been passed. So that identified a number of problems that the region is facing. One of them is the lack of communication. Basically, they mean to say the connectivity issue. Now, of course, in recent years, in terms of connectivity, certain steps have been taken, and these are actually resulting in some good connectivity in between the region and the other parts of the country. But that physical connectivity through roadways and railways still today is not very good. So that is one challenge for the region as a whole. A few other issues which have been highlighted by the survey, by the report, was capacity building, kind of participation of the people in governance, and use of resources for the benefits of the local people. So these are some of the other problems that they highlighted upon. Now, what about the development prospects of the region? You see, if we look into the history, what we find is that during the pre-independence period, the region's prosperity was rooted in the industrial process or industrialization. So these were based on certain local resources. For example, we talk about tea, petroleum, coal, forest, etc. And in fact, a lot of development, infrastructural development happened because this region had a lot of such resources. For example, railways developed, and railway network, if you look, uh, the rail network which is going from Guwahati to upper Assam part in Assam, you will find that these are not actually touching the major towns in the state. Rather, it was going through the forest areas, through the places where the petroleum products were available. So this was the route actually. So that was basically to have connectivity with the production centers of these kind of resources, petroleum products. For example, Digboy is connected, for example. Okay, Duliajan is connected because oil resources are available out there. Okay, so that way it goes. Ledu is connected. So after that, it ended up, the train connectivity ended up in Dibrugarh, and from Dibrugarh, from Mohanaghat in Dibrugarh, okay, everything was transported through waterways to Kolkata, because that time it was pre-independence period. It was India only. We didn't have Pakistan or East Pakistan or Bangladesh. So, but that process of industrialization could not be sustained in the post-independence period, mainly due to geographical isolation, which was created by the partition, and also because at that point of time it was kind of state-controlled investment mechanism. It's a public sector investment, and the government somehow gave a lot of emphasis on security issues, and that's why they were not very much keen on investing any further in this northeastern region. And there are instances where the people had to fight for getting refineries to kind of go for refining of the petroleum products produced in this in this region. Now, the Vision 2020 report of Northeastern region has actually suggested that infrastructural facilities on a priority basis should be developed so that the region can benefit out of the increased economic activities of the state. And so far as the future prospect for the region, so we find that the critical inputs of land and water are not yet fully utilized. So it's not only for the state of Assam, but also for the region as a whole. For example, in the case of water resources, particularly in the plain areas, Assam actually, if you look at, water resources are not fully utilized. Groundwater resources are not fully utilized. Similarly, the land is not being properly utilized. The intensity of utilization of land is not very good. For example, we talk about cropping intensity as a measure of intensity of use of the land. Then cropping intensity in Assam particularly, it's around 140%, not yet actually 150% or more. So that means land is not intensively used out here. So there is a scope to further go for further intensive use of these resources. Agricultural sector has a role to play in the process of development because you see, so one thing is that here still today we do not have a kind of this kind of chemical fertilizer dominated agriculture. Of course, in some of the parts it is there. In Assam, in the plains, so chemical fertilizer has played a very important role. But otherwise, there is a huge scope for agriculture, that too in the form of organic farming or organic agriculture. And we all know about the demand for organic products everywhere as of now because of the health issues and other things. So although the productivity of organic farming will be less, but the value of organic farming will be much higher. And that way, probably the agriculture can play a very important role out here. Already Sikkim has started doing this. Of course, there are certain issues out there in the form of having the certification process and so many other things are there, obviously. So in the plain areas, so maybe intensive use of improved inputs with better water management might be one way or one strategy. But hills are endowed with conditions which are suitable for horticultural and other commercial crops, which can be actually done and which has been done in many parts of the country. That should be done in a kind of massive way, probably. But at the same time, we should look into the fact the suitability of the soil and overall agroclimatic conditions for particular varieties of crops. For example, nowadays, actually, there are a lot of emphasis given on cultivation of palm oil. So probably in northeastern region also it might happen, but we need to look into the suitability of the soil and overall impact it might have on the climate or maybe overall kind of topology of the state or the region while taking a decision regarding cultivation of this type of crop is concerned. Now, for this, of course, the market linkage will be very important. The production itself will not be sufficient. So we need to create sufficient marketing linkage for the products which might be produced out there. So a number of other things which we can talk about, agro processing and non-farm sector might be important. I'll not try to explain it because already it's very late. One very important thing for the Northeastern region is it's a relatively good pool of human resources. So the people in the Northeastern region, particularly in the hills, majority of them can speak very good English. So we have a good pool of English speaking population. Female education has also been very good. Mizoram is a case in point. All of us know about that. So based on that, actually, probably, so this good human resource, this good pool of human resources is one positive thing or advantageous thing for the region as a whole. Better utilization of these resources is very important from the point of view of overall development of the region is concerned. Already I mentioned that actually we need to create opportunities for these people. Otherwise, these people will have to waste their talent and they may have to be busy with folks which are not at their as per their qualification. Then as we have a good pool of human resource and also at the same time a lot of activities which are good for kind of service sector activities, probably strategies should be there for service sector oriented activities which can boost overall economic activities in the region. So enormous potential in tourism is there. We are very good. We have a lot of resources, flora and fauna, and so many other things are there. Adventure tourism has started happening. Tea tourism has started happening, but we are not in a position to aggressively market these things. Strategy is important out here. I can tell you, you see, Assam and India as such were producing tea for so many years now, for so many centuries, more than 1 century, 2 centuries now. But the fact is that even tea tourism hasn't been aggressively pursued in Assam, or maybe for that matter in India. See, but you just think about Sri Lanka. Many of you might have visited Sri Lanka, Colombo. So you might see that everywhere in the souvenir shop and other things, so they are trying to promote their tea industry. So even for tourists, they have a provision of kind of showing how tea is produced in a factory, how it is processed in a factory. So all those things are done there. But here in Assam or in India, we do not have such a practice. So what I mean to say is that a proper strategy is important. So whatever we have been doing for centuries, so that if that is not suitable, then we probably have to come up with second plan to make sure that so these things are accepted by the tourists, and accordingly we have to have our own plan. Of course, industrial development is important. For that kind of investment will be required, and I'm not sure whether local investment will be sufficiently available for that or not. If not, then we have to try to bring foreign investment. Of course, for that political will be required. Political, not only will, the enterprising political leadership is important to bring in foreign investment or maybe outside investment to this region. Finally, we can also talk about this look-east and act-east policy. Now, look-east policy, as all of us know, it's already 30 years old policy. Recently, there has been some makeover in the form of act-east policy. Now, if this act-east policy is aggressively pursued, I believe Northeastern region can benefit a lot. Of course, some of the activities are going on, but I believe the pace of work is not very good even today. Now, trilateral highway, the work on trilateral highway is not is not very good in essence. Of course, we have got newspaper report saying that Situate Port, the connectivity to Situate Port will be faster now because of the kind of better relationship with Bangladesh. So these type of things are important. Yes, we understand that for act-east policy, this political environment is very important, and probably for the government of India, Northeastern region is not at the forefront of act-east policy. Probably that is one of the reasons that they are not aggressively pursuing this. Otherwise, if the components of Act's policy would have been pursued a little bit more aggressively, then probably the northeastern region would have been able to overcome the problem of or the bottleneck of geographical isolation. Instead of it becoming a kind of bordering region of the country, it could have been a kind of vibrant region connecting with the Southeast Asian region. Probably that is not happening, which is really unfortunate for all of us. With this, I would like to conclude. I'd like to thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to interact with you. And I'll be happy if you have any questions or comments or suggestions on my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir, for that informative lecture on Northeast economic development. I think we've heard about what's happening here in Northeast. I mean, we all are aware of the recent trends in Northeast, our development and all its issues. So, like as sir have said, if anyone of us have any questions in the context of his lecture, please. Question is open right now.
Mr. Albert, can I have a time from Sarnaya? Albert, can you hear me? Albert?
Yes, yes.
Can I have a time?
Yes, yes,
please.
please.
It may be 2 or 3 minutes.
Okay, please, sir.
Yes. So when we talk about the economic development of Northeast region, so there is always a negativity in our mind. So I highlight what we have facing problem in Mizoram. So number one is educated unemployment. As we know in our college this year, we have enrolled more than 1,000 students. This means that after 3 years, there will be at least or more than 300 BA degree certificate holder. This net increase of about 300 BA degree holder may not find a suitable job in the market in and around Mizoram or in Aizawl, because Aizaul's economy or the Mizoram's economy did not have capacity to absorb this much amount of people. And at the same time, as far as our college is concerned, as we know that presently there are 27 colleges in Mizoram, and then we can estimate how much educated unemployed people will be aided after every 3 years. And number two, the problem what we are facing in Mizoram is lack of skilled labor. Lack of skilled labor. No doubt, our state has recorded one of the highest literacy in India, next to Kerala. We know that this high record of literacy is not enough for having or for achieving growth in all aspects of today's IT world. Our immediate need is to produce more skilled labor, which market has presently demanded. And next point is urban unemployment. If we ask our students or any students within Aizawl or Mizoram, what will you do after you finish BA or undergraduate course? Majority of the students will try to find job under the government sector. But I know that it is very, very difficult to get a job under the government sector. So because of the pandemic and the continuous austerity measures adopted by the government, it is more and more difficult to find a job under the government sector. And at the same time, the process of urbanization is faster. It means that more and more people migrated to urban areas. So that the process of urbanization is faster than the peoples who are going to find job in rural areas. This is another problem faced by Mizoram today. And next point, what I want to mention is less skill development center, less skill training institute. Today we are having only one training institute known as Industrial Training Institute, popularly known as ITI in Mizoram, which was approved by the government. There is only one training institute, skill development center in Aizawl. Somewhere there may be small privately owned institute of skill development center for traders. And next point is lack of transport and communication or transport bottleneck. The road system in our state can be categorized into three groups: national highway, district road, and link roads. These last two, district roads and link roads, connected farms and agriculture producing areas. But the quality of our roads, these district roads and link roads, or even national highway, were very, very bad quality or inferior compared to other roads of our neighboring states. Every year, these roads were damaged by monsoon rain. But these two roads, district roads and link roads, connected agricultural producing areas. So because of that, these bad quality of road greatly hampered the transport of agricultural goods to market areas or in Aizawl. And at the same time, this has greatly increased the quantity of damaged agricultural goods in agriculture producing areas or in farms in rural areas. And another point is decrease of forest cover in Mizoram, continuous decrease of forest cover in Mizoram. As we know, presently there are 8 districts in Mizoram. In 2017, there was a report, Mizoram Forest Report. Among the 8 districts of Mizoram, 2 districts, Kolasip District and Longtlai District, have 0% dense forest. It means that they don't have dense forest. And at the same time, land area of Mizoram is 21081 square kilometers. The total land area of these 2 districts is 3939 square kilometers. So if we compare, if we compare the area of these 2 districts to area of Mizoram, so we came to know that there is an alarming situation of decrease in forest cover. And there was a report here that made by IBEF, India Brand Equity Foundation. Yes, according to this report, at current prices, net state domestic product of Mizoram have reached 237.56 billion, 237.56 billion rupees. In terms of US dollars, it is 3.37 billion US dollars in 2019-2020. In fiscal year 2021, that during April 2020 to February 2021, the total merchandise export of Mizoram is at $0.45 million. So if we compare the total merchandise export and the total net state domestic product of Mizoram in 2019-20, so there is a great disparity of merchandise export and merchandise imports. So these are the different points what I have mentioned in accordance with the lecture of our sir, Professor Mrinal, Professor Dutta. Thank you, Albert.
Okay, thank you, sir, for your mark. And then, sir, if any other attendees would like to ask.
Mr. Albert, I
Yes.
don't think I have to respond to the observations of the speaker. So do you want to respond to the observation?
If you want, sir, yeah, if you want, you can.
I just want to say a few things actually. You see, so I could not note down the name of the speaker actually. See, he has rightly pointed out many of the issues of Mizoram, specifically Mizoram. But at the same time, some of the solutions he has already given. If you look at, for example, he talked about educated unemployment and urban unemployment. And at the same time, he is also talking about lack of skilled labor. So now, so if some of these educated unemployed can be provided skill training, then the problem of lack of skilled labor can be overcome in the state of Mizoram. For that, certain initiatives have to be created.
Yeah,
by the
definitely,
government.
sir. Definitely, sir.
Yeah. So that may be one thing actually. So you have already given the solution there itself when you say that lack of skilled labor.
That
Yes,
will
I
be
also
the
know
immediate
that.
solution, sir.
Yeah, no, yes, that is true, but it will require some time. For example, at the local level, probably ITIs can be set up, so which can help, or which can prepare the people. For example, you might be requiring a plumber, or maybe kind of mason or a carpenter. So these type of people might also be required. Nowadays, you see mobile repairing centers, so these are required, no? Depending upon the situation, we have to.
Yeah.
So
There are
depending
many
upon the
mobile repairing
requirement, the
centers
skills
in
are to be
Aizawl.
provided.
Yeah.
Yes. So other things I fully agree with you. So transport and communication is a very big problem out there, and obviously, so we cannot do much on that because huge investment will be required, and that is to come from the central government, I believe. The state governments do not have this much of resources to actually carry out this type of massive construction activities. So that's why the policies should have some kind of favorable kind of policies for the northeastern region or for this states actually. I strongly believe in that. True.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Thank you.
Right, sir. Yes. Hello. Yes. Any other questions or any doubts, please?
Albert, can I
Yes.
I ask one question, please?
Yes.
Okay. Sir, I would like to know that according to you, what do you think is the most suitable growth model for a developing economy like India, or to be more precise, for an underdeveloped economy like Mizoram?
Now, can you repeat the question? I couldn't follow the first part. What did you say?
Okay,
The
sir.
growth model you talked about?
What do you think is the most suitable growth model for an underdeveloped economy like India, or to be more precise, for an underdeveloped economy like Mizoram?
Okay.
The most suitable growth model.
Okay. It's a difficult choice, actually, difficult question. In fact, if you look at Indian situation also, you see, India and South Korea, they gained the independence almost at the same period of time. Then at that point of time, US and other Western countries were very much optimistic about future performance of India as a whole. And they were not very much optimistic about South Korea. They thought that after a period of time, South Korea will be a basket economy. You can throw anything in the into the basket, right? But by 1970s, South Korea, okay, started showing much economic progress. And today, you know about South Korea's economy, right? So anything you have to purchase, no? So you have to purchase maybe Korean product only. You go to Samsung, LG, all those products are actually dominating Indian market. Even you might be purchasing a kind of Hyundai or maybe kind of Kia Motors, right? So, but by 1970s, India actually started becoming a basket economy kind of thing. So it depends upon the policy. I fully agree with you. The models, the policies are very important. But what kind of a model or what kind of a policy will be good? Now you see, in case of Korean experience, they went for a kind of outward-oriented trade strategies. So whereby they try to develop a sector which will try to produce goods according to the international demand. So they try to give emphasis on quality, efficiency, productivity, all those things they focused on. India went for inward-looking trade strategy, whereby they tried to give protection to some of the sectors as a result by way of providing tariff wall, increase the import duties, for those products coming from outside so that they cannot compete with the local products. Okay, so but that didn't work that much. So today we are not a net exporter country in the world, right? We have to import a lot of things. Although some of the agricultural products we are very good, and we actually export. In terms of overall manufacturing items, our manufacturing sector is not very strong. Okay, so that we have to keep in mind. Now, insofar as Indian development experience is concerned, so there have been a lot of debates whether India should or maybe individual states should go for development model like the Kerala one, or whether we should go for Punjab model. In case of Punjab model, growth is more important, right? So you need to have higher income growth, per capita income growth, so something like that. In the case of Kerala, they have given more emphasis on health and education and so many other things, which are essential for human development. Now, of course, if you go for more human development, then probably your growth might not be that high. So that may not happen all the time. So there might be a kind of trade-off between these two. Now, it's difficult to choose one. But for a state like Mizoram or for a state like Assam, actually, you see, first of all, I believe income growth is important because unless we have enough income, we will not be having enough surplus. And if we do not have surplus, we will not be having enough public investment on roads, on health, on education. And I strongly believe that these are some of the things which are to be created by the government, not by the private sector. For example, health facilities are to be created by the state government, and people should have free health facilities, right? Similarly, education up to a level should be created by the government. The government should invest there. So if the government has to have this much of resources to invest in these sectors, then probably they have to have relatively higher growth. And for that, actually, income growth is important. The strategy should be there to have higher income growth. But let me also tell you one thing. I told that most of the northeastern states are not self-reliant economies. So they are relying on the central transfers. Okay, so that is one thing which we have to avoid now. We try to, it's better for us to try to become self-reliant economy. Sikkim has been able to do that to some extent. Because Sikkim also has problem with kind of physical connectivity. They do not have railway network. Very recently, they have one airport. Okay, so but somehow they are in a position to attract investors. For example, pharmaceutical companies. Many pharmaceutical companies have invested in they have their production units in Sikkim. Okay, so that way a lot of investment has come to the state. Probably we have to be in a position where we can be self-reliant. We have to have our local entrepreneurs also. That is where we are missing actually. We are lacking. You just think about almost every place, right? Almost every place, every state in the country, in the northeastern region, we do not have local entrepreneurs. So if you do not have local entrepreneurs, kind of profits which are generated, these will be repatriated. So that these things will go to the place to which these investors belong. So that is one big issue. If the local entrepreneurs could have generated profits for themselves, that could have been invested here itself. And that investment is very important from the point of view of long-term economic growth. So I believe every state has a responsibility to have long-term policies so that they can ensure long-term economic growth for each of these states. We have the resources. Probably we need to have better policies and kind of people to execute those policies. And above all, we need to love the states, individual states. Okay, so that is another important thing, right? That is my perception only. It may not be correct all the time, right? I hope I could provide some insight to your question. I'm not sure whether you are satisfied with my answer or not.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Okay. Sir, one question for me, sir. If you
Yes.
question.
True,
Yeah,
true.
sir. I think in your slide I found I've seen like industrial growth. I mean industry. So there is constraint in industrial growth in Northeast region. So I think it is due to the um, a major cutback, like a cutback from trade routes during the past years. So this has affect our economic integration and even affect our uh, us from outside investors. So we also have this thing called or what is that, infrastructural bottlenecks, which I think have affected the growth of the industry, especially in the Northeast region. So, sir, what do you think are the challenges for this industry, uh, sir?
Yeah.
It's a vague
Am,
question,
am,
but
yeah. Am I audible to you?
yes, 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 sir.
Gilbert? Yeah. Thank you for this question. Actually, yeah, I have mentioned that kind of growth or the economic performance of the region during the pre-independence period was rooted in kind of industrialization. So why I am saying this is, you see, at one point of time, Dibrugarh district in Assam was economically at par with Thane district of Maharashtra. And Thane district, you know, Maharashtra is an industrial state. Assam is not an industrial state. But at that point of time, refinery was there, kind of, plywood industry was there. Okay, so many things were there in Dibrugarh. Actually, a lot of things were there. So it performed like that. That at that point of time. Now the problem with the Northeast, as you have rightly pointed out. So one thing I personally feel is that so during pre-independence period, it was a the government invested here, and post-independence period, if you look at, so the government, it was a kind of public sector dominated economy, as you know, although it is a mixed economy. So the investment or industrialization was patronized by the government only. So for these type of industrialization activities, probably central government should give more emphasis on. But it didn't happen. It didn't happen. So that's why this flow of industrialization that stopped actually. So that didn't continue. That didn't actually flourish after independence. Now, insofar as post-independence is concerned, as you have rightly pointed out, geographical isolation is a very big issue. You see, kind of movement of goods and people to and from this region. So if you have to have goods or maybe inputs from outside, and if you have to move out from this side, there is a huge problem. Physical movement is a huge problem now. So that has made the region less attractive in terms of investment. We're talking about foreign investment or maybe investment coming from outside, right? So, but if you compare, obviously Himachal Pradesh will be given more preference than Shillong or maybe Cherrapunji because of the proximity to the bigger market and all those things. Okay, so that's a big issue now. And availability of maybe proximity to sea route probably is another condition, precondition kind of a thing. If you are targeting for an international market, so probably you will be requiring a port nearby. So at some point of time, okay, for example, tea was exported. Okay, so during that period of time, everything was done through Kolkata. Waterways played a very important role out there. But today, we do not have that luxury. Actually, it requires a lot of time to transport the product to probably to Kolkata. So that's why I was talking about this Situate port. Now, as a part of Act East policy, the government of India is actually developing. Government of India is trying to have access to Situate port, and if it is done or if it happens, probably the region's attractiveness will be increasing a little bit. That might happen. Uh, Investment is the biggest issue out here, and secondly, in terms of competition, probably will be behind so many other states in the country. So probably industrialist for industrial development, definitely industrial investment should happen, and these things should happen from the big companies. And if the region is deficient or maybe in some parameters, for example, infrastructural facilities, you see, electricity is another important thing. For some of the states, In northeastern region, electricity is production is surplus. For example, Tripura, for example, Sikkim, Mizoram. I'm not very much sure whether you are surplus or not, but Assam is deficient, highly deficient. For these type of states, probably investors will not be very much interested to come and invest because certain preconditions in terms of infrastructural facilities are not already there. So that these things actually hamper industrial development. Okay, of course, there are a lot of theories. We will not go to the theories about industrial location theories, but simply I feel these are some of the issues insofar as industrialization is concerned.
Thank you so much, sir.
Hello.
Any other? Yes.
Oh, hello, Mr. Moderator. Can I ask one simple question? My name is Andrew Silo. I'm
Yes,
working. I'm teaching in Govt College. One question that I really want to ask is that Mizoram is endowed with bamboo. So till now we don't have this paper mill industry. Although we are endowed with this bamboo, so is there any constitutional provision to set up this paper mill industry in our state? Although we are main supplier of this raw material to Kachar paper mill industry, Mizoram is the main supplier of this paper mill. This raw material. To be specific, this bamboo, no, as most of you may aware it. So, is there any what I really want to ask is that is it uneconomical to set up this bamboo industry? Sorry, this paper mill industry in our states, though we are endowed with this bamboo, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. I think you are Dr. Andrew Silo, right? If I can remember correctly. Huh?
Okay. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Where are you working, Dr. Silo, now?
Yeah, sir, I can hear you. I can hear you,
Where
sir.
are you? Where are you working?
I'm working in Govt College.
Okay,
Govt
thank you
College.
very much. Okay. No, actually, I don't have a specific answer to your question because you are asking me whether there is any kind of constitutional condition or maybe kind of issues in setting up of paper mill in Mizoram. I don't have any knowledge about that. First of all, let me admit that. And secondly, yeah, you see, regarding the paper mills in Assam, you see, Kasar paper mills, yes, I know that actually the inputs, raw materials were supplied mostly from the Mizoram. Yes, that is true. But of course, you know about the Kasar paper mill or Jagrod paper mill. So now, actually, they are on the verge of what you say. They have actually stopped operation for so many years now. There are a lot of issues, and the government is somehow giving some compensation, and probably this will not be functioning anymore. I don't have much idea about that. Now, insofar as these industries are concerned, obviously these are big investment actually. For that, yes, raw materials are available, and at the same time, people and there should be a detailed kind of project report kind of a thing, or maybe kind of viability studies can be carried out actually, and prospective investors, if they can be somehow wooed or maybe attracted towards the state, and for that probably the state government has to take the initiative, right? In the case of Kachar paper mill and Jagrod paper mill, these were kind of public sector enterprises. But somehow these didn't remain viable because of certain reasons. I don't know actually, but there were issues out there. So, so that's why they are actually closing now. But I don't find any reason why a paper mill cannot be set up in Aizawl or maybe some other convenient place from where the products can be transported easily to many other parts of the country. So that's if it is viable, then obviously investment should happen out there because raw materials are available. But the fact is that the investment will be lumpy investment. So for that, somebody has to invest, whether it is the government or whether it is some public sector enterprises. So if it is public sector enterprises, government has to take the initiative. Similarly, in the case of private sector investment also, actually you have to bring in big industrialists, right? Otherwise, kind of small entrepreneurs will not be able to invest that much.
Okay.
So that way, in fact, probably the government can look into the possibilities of having investment for this type of industry. But apart from that, so that is one issue, of course. But let me also tell you that nowadays, China has done a lot of work. Actually, China has done a lot of work on bamboo. So there are a lot of varieties of products. We should not only think about paper industry. You see, for construction materials, many of the construction materials can be prepared out of bamboo only. China has done it. You can see that, no? So if any kind of entrepreneurial activities happen, for example, you see ceiling kind of a thing. So these are also prepared out of bamboo only. So okay, so these are also having demand because they are organic materials, right? And biodegradable products. So those things we are not exploring actually in India. However, China has done it. So probably we should look into those innovative products also, which can be produced with the help of our raw materials, which probably we do not have much information about. We need to look into that as well. I personally feel so. Thank you very much for your query. It's a very pinpointed question. Of course, I'm sorry I don't have that specific answer regarding this
Thank you so
constitutional
much, sir. Thank you so much,
provision.
sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Andrew from GSC. And any other question? If there is no other question, then we can conclude this webinar. Any other question? Okay, so thank you very much, sir, Professor Mrinal Kanti Dutta, sir, for we are very grateful to have you as our speaker for tonight's webinar, and thank you very much once again for participating, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah, next I'll invite Sir Matthew, who is also from the Department of Management, to do the vote of thanks. Okay, Matthew, please.
Good evening, everyone. I hope I'm audible as well. So I'm Matthew, and I'm here to present the vote of thanks on the occasion of the webinar. So on behalf of the college and the organizers of the webinar, I would like to thank our guest lecturer and resource person, Professor Mrinal Kanti Dutta of IIT Guwahati, for enlightening us with your knowledge. The lecture gave deep insight to the topic and was really informative, especially the points where he talked about the NER economy during the post and pre-liberalization periods. It was really informative, and I would also like to extend my thanks to the principal and the group of organizers for inviting Professor Mrinal to conduct this webinar. So to end my speech, I would also like to thank all the students and the participants for your attention and your learning. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Good night, everyone. We can conclude this webinar. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Albert. Good night to all of you.
Thì khan economics department khan in meeting kha nei zui khan thai mai lo na
Oh, hello, sir. Sir. Tiyan kanya kan lowly pa ngayon doon. So,
Sir Albert,
yes.
we
No?
economy meeting kayo record them.
Yes.
Record the room.
Hmm.